So my name is Amanda Kidshaw. I am the gallery manager at the New Hampshire Art Association, and I'm really excited about this Zoom call today, the panel to talk about how to have a successful solo show. And I'm just gonna get my PowerPoint going so I can share a couple of our artist images. And I want to introduce our panelists today, Carol Van Loon, who just won second place in the Dunphy. She's a staff member and a longtime member of the NHAA. She's had many solo shows at the gallery as well as other local exhibition places, other galleries. Mary Beth Patterson, who was our bestseller so far for the year of 2021. And she had a beautiful solo show in the East Gallery for October. And Howard Muscott, who had a great body of work. He's a new member, and his body of work was in July, right? Was it July?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna jump right in. And I hope that you guys find this all useful information. And if you have any questions, we can answer them all at the end. So if you just save your questions. And then after we hear from our panelists, I'm going to jump in and kind of go over what we're looking for our body of work application this year. And instead of calling it rentals, now we're calling it the exhibition proposal series. And I want to kind of demystify that for you and make it answer any questions you might have. It's very simple what we're looking for, so please don't be intimidated. So with that, the first question for our panelists is, when did you know that you were ready to rent a wall or a gallery? Is anyone who wants to jump in there first?
I'm happy to jump in if you want, because I mean, mine being a new member may be different than Carol and Mary Beth's experience. And congratulations, Carol, on the Dunphy. That's excellent. My strategy was, being a new member, was to actually jump in on everything right from the beginning. In other words, if I'm going to join a new organization and one that provides, I think, a really fine variety of opportunities to show and sell work, that I was going to jump in with both feet as quickly as possible. And that seemed like it was just a no-brainer to say when the walls were available that I was going to jump in and do it. So I knew from the beginning that I wanted to do one of the body of work walls.
When I'm working on a project, I can kind of tell when I'm done and I'm ready to show it. And the show that I had in September, I had finished shooting the end of last year. So I was ready. It gave me this year to kind of reflect on it and have it ready for September.
Well, mine, I just kind of wung it. When I became a member a year ago, they immediately sent out the, what was it, like the lottery to where, which gallery you would want to show in if you could and what month. And so I just kind of put in for later dates of the following year, like July and August, and then the one in October, which is the one I kind of won with the window. And I really had almost no paintings at that time to show, maybe about 4 or 5. So that gave me almost a whole year to work on it and, get ready for it. So it really motivated me to paint more and gave me an actual goal, which was kind of wonderful.
I love that. And that's really diverse, different ways of seeing things. I'm also the same way, where I love having a deadline to work towards. I find that incredibly motivating. So it's nice to know yourself as an artist and what will, what approach you like to take. So for my second question, I have, what advice do you have for artists who work in several mediums or have multiple styles of work?
Well, my advice is pick one and go with it. I think I've seen a lot of shows where there's 3 different kinds of styles or this or that and the other thing. It gets kind of confusing. I think you should focus on one aspect of your work.
Yeah, I agree with that. I guess the only other option you would have is if you were renting just one of the gallery spaces is to group every different style on different walls or something, but it could be confusing to, you know, the viewers to have so many different, you know, series and methods to do that.
And it's perfect because I get to show the opposite perspective of that approach, which is how can you mix things? So as I interpreted that question, it came back to me to theme. So we're gonna see if we can get a smooth transition over to my slides here. Hang on us for a second. Hope that this should work and you should start seeing my slides.
All good.
All good so far? Everybody got a full screen? Looking
Yeah.
good?
Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. So, and it's also, I mean, I may also argue that my college professor brain, which overthinks things, gives multiple perspectives as well. So I think it's absolutely great advice to have one theme like both of you have shared. But here's my approach to if you wanted more than one theme as you go for the wall. So first of all, I thought you have to consider which space you were able to rent. You know, if you're lucky enough to pick which wall and the configuration and the amount, that's great. But if you go into the lottery and you don't get your first choice or your second choice, I would always start with, okay, you know, what wall? So I had the South Gallery J wall there. You can see the 13 feet. But I think the unique part about this is it had a 26-inch edge. So that may allow you to do a little something with a slightly different theme because it's a slightly different edge anyway, in that sense of it. So consider that space, consider your different sections. And then also, I think in terms of themes, if you're able to have bin work, and we'll come back to this later in the question about price points and different things, but if you're able to have bin work, then you could get a separate theme in matted prints than you might have on the wall, right? So you may be able to get other themes. Whatever we do in the process, you're hoping that, well, I think most of our goal, again, it depends on people, but I guess there's always a balance between sellable, are we trying to sell, or are we just trying to show our work and be artists in that way? But if we're trying to balance one extreme, which is, I got a wall, I'm paying for that wall, and how many things can I get up there to try to make money, most sales, and more importantly, artistic, professionally looking, aesthetic, etc. You're able to, you know, to work with all those things. So as you balance that all out, I try to use a couple of different themes. You may look at that and you may not actually like it or think it's well balanced. This was the one before we came in with a small table in the front, which had a bio and cards and things, which are important. But I think if we go through just the themes, first thing I do is I ask myself on that display, on that sellable show, you know, what centerpiece, you know, big piece or whatever, what's one of my biggest pieces I could put in the middle to draw people in. Just even size is what has to be good, of course, but size in that way. Then I think you could look at different mediums, do certain mediums in that way. That's where you have to look at, if you're a painter, it may not be good to have sketching and painting and oil, and that's, you know, I get that part of it. In photography, it's different. I am able maybe to do a little more, I have more flexibility in things. I certainly have more flexibility in having pieces around than artists who have to make every individual piece. I have an advantage there. But of course, your subject can be your theme. Sometimes your subject can work with an environmental context. I'll give you an example of that. It also could be your theme is color. So you could get a style theme, you could get a subject theme, you could get a color theme, and then you got to consider, and here's where most of the time I think if you're a photographer and you're going to have framed prints and canvases and aluminum, you have to be careful not to mix those a lot. I didn't put any frame prints. I think frame prints don't go well in that one, you know, in the one theme. Always consider size. I don't know if this is too much detail or helpful in one way or another. So obviously, you can go with a subject theme, and here, by the way, not only both subject, but colors. These two schemes go together, and Snowy's sold very well for me in that body of work pieces. They often do. You can also go again for a subject theme like this, which has a little environment more in one, but clearly the colors, the subject, the environment stuff seems to fit together. These were not in the show, but I said, what the heck, I'm going to take a liberty and show you. I got back from Africa about a month ago, my first and ever trip, but you could mix and match a theme that has a upfront, more like a profile of that beautiful male leopard on the right, or the environmental context. This is really about as matched as you get. This could just be the theme without the leopard. If you get my point, you could have a tree, an environment, didn't even have the leopard. It has the same color theme. So I think you could go different directions. And obviously color patterns that go together would be helpful. The advice given by both the other ladies, I think, is in some ways the best advice, because my brain goes complex and I'm trying to get different things, because I also want, in a way, I had this thought where I want to put my things that I feel sell a lot, that are going to, kind of represent and do well also locally. We'll come back to that later, but those are the themes. And then, I don't really mix and match. Sometimes I can put a canvas and an aluminum together, but I leave you with a question for an audience, because I'm an educator. If you were going to do this as well, do you like this better as a matted frame print? Do you think aluminum would be the best approach, or canvas? That's the kind of decision I would make on going on a wall to integrate things one way or another. So that's my take on that second question. It's a little longer and whatever, but I think you could get a thematic wall in different kinds of ways in addition.
Absolutely. And also, just to go off of what you're talking about, Howard, I would also argue that all of your pieces are outdoors. And, you have that as a very strong theme in your work, that unifies it. And, you could have sort of like these gritty urban scenes or interiors or portraits, and none of, you have, even though you do have multiple themes within your work, overall, you have this consistency of outdoors, of nature, whether it's landscape or animals.
There you go.
And that is very consistent. So
That is true. Thank you. That's true. Good point. Want to get off of the screen share, get back to you
yes.
as well. Yeah, I did have a promo slide. I probably should show it, because we all try to market ourselves. So 2 seconds of chasing the golden light. If you ever get a chance to go to Africa, to paint, to do plein air, to do whatever, oh my God, it's such an amazing place. Definitely go.
Thank you. All right. And then while I'm going back to my screen share here, Carol, can you tell us about the wall vinyl that you used for your exhibition? I have some slides here of some of the images. So the one right here, this is from your most recent show.
This is my most recent show, The Shop, and that's basically one sheet of vinyl. And I blew up a section of a picture, and then I put a panel on it. I gave a little description about it. I spent my working career working in a branding company, so I'm used to creating a brand for my work. And I think these are a little more expensive. I mean, you have to spend a little money, but I really feel that I want to get my story. This is part of my story. So the one on the right was from my latest show, The Shop. The one on the left is a show that I was a participant in 5 Visions of Cuba. We only had a small window to get some kind of message out there. So this is a piece of vinyl that's perforated so that the light comes in and we could see out, but nobody can see in, and it gets the message across. As they say, these things are a little pricier to do, but I just think they add a lot of professionalism to the exhibit.
Yeah, I agree. And, I'm probably the one who spends the most time in the gallery, and during your shop, during your show, The Shop, we had a lot of people admiring the wall vinyl, and it kind of draws you in, and it explains exactly what you're looking at.
Oh,
And for a lot of people who are viewing work, they need an entryway to understanding what the project is about, or to even understand who the artwork is by. So your use of vinyl is a really great way to introduce yourself and your show.
Why, ironically, that particular wall was the one that Howard had, that little extra bump, and
Oh,
you
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
yeah.
see it as you come in through the East Gallery, and it kind of helped drag people into the rest of the gallery.
Works
South
perfectly.
Fraser.
Works perfectly with the
Mhm.
Barnes piece there.
And this is for this was a show from 2000, I think it's 14. I did a big project called Barnes, and I wanted to do something on the windows on the outside to try to, bring people in. Once again, this is perforated vinyl. You put it up on the outside, lets the light in. People can't see in, but you can see out. And then I use the cursive for the barns throughout the whole project to kind of keep things together. The panel on the left is a piece of vinyl. Once again, I use a section of a picture. The white panel that's too small to really read, but it told the story of why I photographed what I did and how important it was to me.
Mhm.
Nice.
Nice.
And if somebody is interested in vinyl, I'm happy to sit down and talk to you about it. As I say, it's a pricier item than just putting up a banner or something, but I just really think it adds a lot to your show.
Yeah, I loved what you did for my show, Welcome to Goose Pond. That really drew people in, thank you for that.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and also for Mary Beth's show, she had these great rack cards. So she had a piece on that side wall in East Gallery. I'm sorry, I don't have an image to show everyone. She had wall vinyl that said "Welcome to Goose Pond" with her name, and then it was a great entry point and you just knew, because all of the work was consistent. And she had some great wall signage that you were looking at Mary Beth's work. And the theme of On Goose Pond was just really consistent throughout, and it told a beautiful story.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. So this is a question for all of you. How did you know? And this kind of links back to the first question, so we can kind of skim over it if it's already been answered. But how did you know that you had enough work to fill the wall or gallery?
Well, I actually went, and I think it's really important to spend time in the space that you are renting, because I know you give the measurements and everything for all the walls and everything like that, but my brain does not work that way at all. So I went, when I volunteered the first time with Carol, I actually walked around and I took photographs of whoever the artist was showing at that time, and just kind of walked around and felt my own space. And that really helped me tremendously, so that when I did feel like I had enough of the artwork, I laid everything out the way I would hang it. And it worked beautifully. I mean, it was really easy to hang, and I knew exactly where everything was going. So I really think you need to spend time in your space and volunteer. You get so many ideas that way,
Mm.
Good point. For me, the question is easy. I just keep an inventory around, and it's so much easier as a photographer than than a painter or a sculptor, etc. In that other medium as you go. The only time it would be tough, is if you're doing a great theme like Barnes or whatever in that way. So for me, it wasn't, in this case, I had enough images that I thought could play and work well together. I love the suggestion, which people should take Mary Beth up on, which is to see the gallery and walk through it and get a feel for it. I say also bring more than you think you can hang, just as a slightly practical matter if you have them. bring more than that, because you never exactly know unless you've actually measured the space out at home and done the exact, and it doesn't quite work exactly what you'll need. So you might need an extra one here, or flip two out together as well.
For mine, I once again sat in the gallery, and I'm there a lot, so I had that opportunity, and I just measured, I knew how long each wall was, and I know what size my work was, because it's all the same size. And so I was just able to say, okay, I need 12 pictures.
Mhm.
I just figured out, I knew how many were going to be on each wall, and just walk through that way.
Nice.
Mary Beth, can you tell us a little bit about your East Gallery window? Because I know that's something that a lot of artists struggle with. And sometimes you can have enough work for the interior of the gallery, but that window, the one where we're looking at right now with the Barnes vinyl on it,
Mhm.
that's a big window, and it can take a lot of work to really fill that up and make it look nice.
Yeah, that was actually the one thing that I had not completely planned for. So when I came down to hang the show, I did have like one large painting and then several small paintings that were perfect for those little stands that you supplied. And so I did have enough paintings to make it all even, on each side, and hang the big one in the middle. But that was the one thing. I think I'd actually even asked Carol at one point if she had photographs of any other windows, from previous shows, because I really didn't have a feel for how much work needed to go in it, but it worked out beautifully. Thank God.
Awesome. All right. Do you have any tips for what helped you stay on track to meet the art call and PR deadlines?
Well, I think the NHAA website has so much information on it, and I printed out, I can't remember what it was called, like planning for the show or whatever it was, but it gives you stages, like 8 weeks prior, do this. And I'm very organized that way. So I even had like my daily planner, and 8 weeks I went and filled everything out what I needed to do. And I think that just helped me tremendously. So I wasn't scrambling, thinking, oh no, I was supposed to do this. It's just, I had everything completely organized each week. And that is an invaluable piece on the website that really helped me tremendously.
Yeah, I'd say ditto to that, in that way, that in my field, they call it a task analysis. You broke down the stuff so nicely in detail, in terms of dates and updates, et cetera. So I'd say that info sheet and then moving to a straight calendar planning, as Mary Beth said, made it easy. If you're willing to use the tools you guys provide and all that structure, and you have your own good organizational system to back it up, to put your stuff into our planning tools, whether they're electronic or whether you still use a hard paper calendar like I do. It's great. So you guys, kudos to you for putting together that kind of detail.
And that all that information is printed in our prospectus. So at the end of this call, I'll show you where you can find that information. All right. Howard, many people who look at your photographs are interested in the story behind the image. They want to know what animal it is and where it was taken. How did you prepare for that?
I think Carol could answer that question too, and with her passion for her individual subjects and the rest of it as you go. I think the first step in the answer to that is in what you show, that you make sure that you take images of things that you're passionate about. If you photograph or paint or whatever, what you're passionate about, and in things that are meaningful to you, I find that the human brain does a pretty good job of remembering an image out in the wild where I've seen that owl flying, or this particular beautiful sunset. So I think start off by that particular one. And so then if you get that, I also, for this show, picked things that kind of that had memories and history over time. So for good or bad, it might even be bad today, I'm a natural storyteller. And so it didn't take much, doesn't take much work. And I think that may be true where artists have a leg up, where the memories are kind of seared into the photograph, into the experience, into the painting. So for me, it didn't take a lot of work. I mean, the only time I get stuck, I don't know, Carol, as a photographer, et cetera, is different. Like, do I remember the name of that small bird, which kingfisher that was? And so I might forget a name of the type of kingfisher or whatever it's going to be. But most of the story, the memories are there. They're still meaningful. They're still passionate. And if you tell a story long enough, it'll either still be true or it'll embellish and get better. So there you go.
All right. As a person who's, making sales and being in the gallery, I always really like to have as much of that background information as possible, because a lot of times patrons will come to me and say, oh, can you tell me more about this? Or, oh, do you know, tell me more about this artist or this medium or this piece. And so any information that you can give to me in the NHAA when you are having your solo show, the better I can sell your work. To be able to tell some of the, retell the stories that you tell me. And as I was saying with Mary Beth's show, her rack cards really helped. And I was able to take one of those rack cards and hand it out to every patron who was inquiring about her work and be able to tell them the story. And I had all of that information on the rack card. So I didn't always have to keep it in my head, which I appreciated. So Mary Beth, do you want to talk about your rack cards and how you put that together?
Yeah, well, I'm actually a graphic artist, so that kind of part was easy for me. But the rack cards, I wanted to make it personal because my show was so personal, about like the family home and everything like that. And the one thing I kind of regret about it is that I wish I had maybe made it not so about that one show and maybe more generic, because now I do have 200 rack cards that I can't really use unless I keep painting about Goose Pond, which I could. But I know everybody that did get one thoroughly enjoyed reading it and getting to know the storyline and everything like that. So I guess my one thing is I think I printed 250 out, and I don't think I would do that much the next time. But yeah, I do know that everybody really enjoyed reading the story about it. I also had business cards and one of those art, the gallery show guest books, so people could sign and everything. And that was kind of nice, kind of personalized that for every visitor as well.
For the other artists, what printed materials did you find the most helpful?
Well, I had business cards, and I usually do business cards. I usually make 6 versions of with different photos on it. So some of them were specifically the shop. Others were pictures that I liked and I wanted that I could look at on a business card for a while. I always put a bio up because people do like to know who you are. They like to know a little bit of the story. And with my panel, it kind of gave an introduction to the show. So like Mary Beth did her rec card, I did the panel on the wall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, I mean, just to piggyback on what you both said, I think, what you're describing when you started off, Mary Beth, is that piece, which is, are you doing like I did, almost a show introducing NHAA patrons, the people who see the gallery, to me and my work. And therefore it's, I think, I like the way you said it, man, it's my wildlife and my landscape. It's outdoor themed, but it's kind of a, best of that I have, right? And therefore a bio, like you put up, Carol, works best with that, because you got a bio. And if I make a bio and people walk away with a bio, I don't have 150 left. And you got the idea. But the balance act is that it's either that kind of show, or it's a very specific show, like you ladies did, that are about barns, or if I did Costa Rica or Africa or landscapes of New Hampshire, whatever it would be, then and did you call it, my hearing isn't good, is it RAD rad card, or is that it?
A rat card.
Rack.
RAT rat card?
R-A-C-K, a rack.
A rack,
It goes in,
a
it fits in a
rack.
rack.
A rack card. So it's not, okay, got it. So it's not, all right. So is it a greeting card?
It's
That
like a
fits in?
brochure. It's like a
It's like
brochure
this.
size
Yeah.
postcard.
So you got, so yes, you use it once, you don't use it as
Yeah.
well. But I think it's a lovely idea to have it personalized for each show and for anybody who's volunteering or selling, as Amanda said too. It's really helpful, but it's that, thing. Are we doing a generic, bio and info about you versus
Right.
let me tell you why I love Barnes, or here's about my story about the family and a little bit of bio, mix a little bit of both of those.
Mhm.
Lenny, we're going to save questions for the end. But Mary Beth, can you show us your card again, just so everyone can see? I know they won't be able
Yeah,
to read
right.
it, but
Yeah.
so it's on card
There you
stock,
go. There you go.
fits in a
And
rack. She has
Two-sided.
her images on the back.
Yeah.
And it has the images of things that were in the show.
Yes.
That's beautiful. Both the ideas that you and Carol shared, the panels and that, are very good ideas.
Thank
You'll
you.
be costing me money, both of you, in the future.
And on that, it's getting back to this theme that we're discussing here about telling your story and what tools are going to work for you, for your personal brand, your artist brand, on how you want to tell your story and what that's going to look like. So that's what I really liked about all of your solo shows, is just they were very clear, and your bios were specific and updated for this particular show. Something that doesn't work is to have a bio that hasn't been updated for the last 10 years, but you still print it and include it for a show that's happening, tomorrow. So that you always want to have all of those materials up to date. So Carol, can you tell us a little bit about the shop book that you made?
Sure. This is the shop book. And I did a book for this particular show because this is an auto garage. And I really enjoyed the photos, but I really didn't think that people would buy one and hang it up in their dining room. So I thought, and I had a lot more pictures than I had space on the wall. So I decided to put a book together, and it has all the pictures around the wall, but it also has additional ones. I also did an extended little story about why I photographed this particular, why I even did this project. This book was, I created this through Blurb. There's lots of online how to make a book producers. This one works well because it works through, if you're a photographer and you use Lightroom, you can build it right in that program. All of these, like Blurb, you can go on that site and they have different templates. So even if you're not a graphic designer or whatever, all that stuff is there and you can just plug your work into it. Basically, you have to have your work. That's you have to have your digital work. I kind of picked a price point. I wanted to be able to sell this book for 25. So that gave me the size limitation of how many pages I could have. And these take about, I would plan on having a month before your show if you're going to put a book together. As they say, they have lots of options and lots of ways to build them. I too have been a graphic designer, so I have the program that I just am comfortable with, and I build it myself. And I probably spent 2 months on this because I built it and then I had one printed so I could use it as a proof, and then went through it and said, this doesn't work, or I need to move some things around. And so then when I went back to print it the second time, I could order the quantity that I wanted because I knew that it was the look that I wanted. But it's something you shouldn't try to rush. As I always say, it's kind of like with art call, don't do it the last day. In July, I started plunking around with this, and it's like I needed to have it done. But I just thought it was a nice thing. We were talking about price points, the photographs on the wall are $250. The book's $25. It was kind of a nice, people, they liked the show and they wanted to see that and they wanted to see additional photos. I thought it would just make a nice, even would make a nice gift.
Mhm.
And you actually sold out of your first run of books.
I did. I'm working on the
Awesome.
second one right now.
Awesome. Awesome. And those will go beyond the life of the show.
Right.
Which is a real nice part.
Exactly.
of that as well.
Exactly.
And one
Unlike
thing that's
calendar.
really, one thing that's really nice about our holiday exhibition, which this year is called Let It Snow, is
Sorry.
that you can actually sell books, calendars, and some of those materials that you'd previously shown at the NHAA. So if you have any materials like that, the Let It Snow show and the holiday show in general is always a great year to do that. All right, so our next question is, did you find Facebook, Instagram, or any other social media platform to be an effective tool for marketing your exhibition? And this question, I know, Mary Beth, you have a lot to say about this.
Yes, I only used Facebook to get this out, and per your, outline on the NHA website, I started putting these advertisements on about 2 weeks before my show. And then I put one out every single week after and during the show. And I thought it was really important to have the address and the website and the second. Get out of here. Go. Sorry. Miranda likes to talk too. So having the website on there was, a very important thing, and the logo too as well. It just made it look more official, and I changed the pictures out every week, and I just posted it as much as I could.
Nice.
And you don't really have to make an ad. I mean, people that aren't graphic designers, just put a picture on and put the information in Facebook that I have there, the address, the date and stuff like that. It doesn't have to be so, perfect like this, but it definitely got a lot of people looking and interested in my artwork.
And everyone has their different ways of communicating and staying in touch with people. So some artists might have an email list and send out their own personal newsletter. Other artists might focus mostly on Instagram or Facebook. But Mary Beth's Facebook ads and the schedule and how regimented it was, this is really, the website is still fairly new to the NHAA, and Mary Beth's show was one of the first shows where we sold multiple pieces just from the website. So you were really able to use that, as you said, by having the NHAA website, and on your advertisements, people were able to go to the website and buy your work without even having to come into the gallery, which was very successful. Anyone else want to talk about social media or the way, or how you guys reach out to your patrons?
I also used Facebook only, and just started, and put a picture up and say, come on down, see it. Or particularly if I was going to be in gallery sitting that day, I always put that up. I'll be in the gallery tomorrow. Stop in and see me.
That's a good idea.
And I
like that.
And I have friends who they watch for those, and that's when they come.
So I use Facebook too, in a less systematic way than Mary Beth, and I do it the other way, which is when you don't have graphic art training, you just put up the information, put out a photograph, and I did it periodically as opposed to religiously in that way, which is great. I love these little ads; they look great. They hit everything, which is terrific. I also have a website, and so on my website, there's a kind of a front page, etc., and it has some running information that I can edit. So obviously, I put up there the show coming up, etc., and connected to it periodically as well. And then I have that multiple strategies. I have an email list to email out to, and the rest of it. So any old way we can do it. So I didn't use Instagram as much for it as well. So the website and Facebook for me.
I also used to use something called Tiny Letter, which is a free newsletter service. So you can collect all of these email addresses. I think now it's owned by MailChimp or Constant Contact, but there are a few like very lower tiers that you can use those mass email services for free, especially as an artist. So I know that they exist, and it's always great when you have your guest book open at the gallery to collect email addresses, even to build your own personal newsletter or add them to, anytime you're having an opening or, your work is featured in an exhibition, to be able to have that and reach out to your fans. That's another resource. And another thing, Mary Beth, is, you, as we sort of touched on this with you making the website sales, but also, we got to coordinate the shipping. So even people who are out of state, or, family or people who, I used to live in Worcester, so it's not that far away, but if my Worcester friends wanted to come up, we can always ship artwork, and that's something that I'm happy to do in the gallery, and we have a great system that makes it really simple. All right, so Howard, you were successful at having replacement pieces, and when people would come in and buy things over the summer, you were like the next day you were in hanging another piece. Can you tell us about how you prepared for that?
I think once again the photographer's advantage of having inventory around. I just keep inventory because one of the things I do, I'm sure other people fall into this category too. I belong to multiple art organizations across the state, and there are various shows and things going on at different times. So, I have the luxury of inventory because I can make a print and I can get it duplicated and have a second copy, versus someone who's sketching is not going to have a second copy unless they're selling reproductions, etc. So for me, again, the same thing that allowed me to, to match things up and to do a smorgasbord is I have too much inventory. Maybe that's the message I should send out. Be careful as a photographer out there having too much inventory, because the first thing I was taught is it doesn't sell or do anybody else any good if it's sitting in your studio. I think that's good advice. So I have things around that I'd like to get out, and I'm happy to be able to replace them. It's good. Sales were very good. I was very pleased in terms of what we were able to sell in that month show. Kudos to the organization for that.
Good.
Yeah, and on that, back to the shipping thing, if you have, you have your show exactly how you want it, kind of more how Mary Beth and Carol had their shows. They didn't replace pieces as things sold, but it was really effective and exciting for other patrons to come in and see all of those red stickers and be like, oh, wow, I got to get one. And that's another effective strategy when people see so much interest in an artist's work. With all of the sold paintings remaining in the gallery, it can really draw excitement and hype around the artist. And in the case where, you have a body of work wall, you can kind of maximize your impact like Howard did by replacing those images, having the buyers take the work off the wall that day, and then keeping the wall looking really full and fresh. And then for another style that is also equally successful, when you have the full gallery, maybe it's better to leave everything up, so then your idea is consistent throughout the entire month that the exhibition is up. So different approaches, but both very effective. And you just have to kind of decide ahead of time which way you want to go. And again, because Portsmouth gets so many tourists and so many visitors, to have a plan about the shipping with me, I'm happy to offer that as a service for all of our artists, so you don't have to worry about it. And that was something that was very effective in both Carol and Mary Beth showed. We shipped work. All right. So let's talk a little bit about pricing. And I think, some of our member artists are what we call emerging. Maybe they haven't had a solo show before. Other artists have been around for a long time and are much more established. And, if we could talk about pricing, maybe like throughout your career, and then also how you plan for different price points in your specific exhibitions.
Well, the way I did it, I researched so much. I mean, both through the NHAA website and just following other artists and people that followed the artists like on Facebook. And the question is always, what do I charge for my paintings? And some people do it by the hour and materials. That's nearly impossible for me to do. Because I could spend 2 days on a painting for 3 or 4 hours here and there. And, I don't think that way. But one thing I did see was, since a lot of my paintings were like 16 by 20s, that a lot of people charge per square inch. So a 16 by 20 would be $320. Well, I just thought $325 sounded better. So I threw in the extra $5, and almost all of my paintings were that price. There were some larger works that were actually like 24 by 36, and they were framed, and I should have probably asked a lot more, but because I am kind of an emerging artist, I didn't want to charge $1,000 for those. So I just kind of guessed on the 2 large ones. And then I had a bunch of smaller ones that I just put out there for $50. And that was probably too little for, the time I had in them. But I think having the main body of work is same size and you can be consistent throughout really helped me a lot.
For mine, my images were all framed the same size. That's a price that I've kind of sat with for a while, and I feel comfortable with it. The book was the price point for me because I knew somebody didn't want to, they say, hang a picture of a garage in their dining room. They might want to look at the book. So the book was less expensive. I see a lot of people in the gallery. They set up a show and they have like 7 different price point things. And I noticed that a lot of times the little stuff goes because it's very similar to what's hanging on the wall. And I think people need to give that some thought as to what do you really want to sell? I mean, I was thrilled that I sold some of the photographs. I wasn't planning on that, but I had planned on hopefully that the book would be the seller, and it did.
Yeah, and just to elaborate on what you're saying, Carol, I found that, just to give some price examples, if we have a painting, say it's a 20 by 24 inch painting on the wall that's for sale by an artist for $700. And then in the same exhibition, the same gallery rental, there's also note cards that are priced at $5, or these tiny little 3x3 canvases that are priced at $20. Often what the patrons will see is, oh, I can have an original piece by this artist and I can buy the 3x3 for $20. So I don't need to go and buy the larger work that's, $700. And so just to be really mindful about and kind of put yourself in the head of the consumer, of the buyer, like even getting an outside perspective, asking another artist or, staff member at the NHAA, we're always here to help you, or even just a friend who's not involved in the arts to take a look at your exhibition and get the idea for your prices. Just because you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot by selling all of your little $20 pieces and then lessening the interest for your larger pieces.
That makes sense.
It does. I mean, I think in some ways, the question that any artist wants to get asked the least is, how do you figure out pricing, right? It's not why we do our work. It's not what we're in it for, unless, I mean, some of us may be working full-time and doing it full-time and trying to earn a living, but many of us are not in that way. So pricing becomes a series of conundrums, and you've already laid out some of the conundrums, right? I mean, because I'm not doing it to earn a living, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. In that way, I want to make my art affordable and available to people. And so I'm sure that some people believe, because I'm not going to say I do, that I underprice my photography in that way. So that first conundrum is that delicate balance, in terms of that price point for a piece of art. And I try to use what I see out there as other examples and other things and ranges, but the ranges are so big, as you've already pointed out, from $20 to $700 or whatever. Photography doesn't kind of get the money that paintings get. Should it? Probably, unless we're one of the big photographers. And Carol someday is going to get, $20,000 for one of her pieces.
Right.
And,
Yay,
and
Carol.
that's going to be a good thing, Carol. But you get it. So I think, so the way I go is, what's kind of an affordable piece for the patron or the consumer in that way. Then I try to take in my margins, because I don't print my own. So I know what it costs me to put it on aluminum or to do X, Y, or Z. I think we all know in that way. Our time, forget it. I mean, people ask you, how long did it take you to get that baby owl, learning to fly? And the answer is a lifetime. So you can't really, in any mileage, forget it. So I would say stick to, think about researching what other people are. I think where I get stuck the most is my conundrum of affordable to not underpricing other photographers and the market and making us all feel devalued. And that's where I need therapy or help, and maybe somebody can help me with that going forward in that way. I will say a final word about the price point. I think you're right. If you stretch it that far and have so many options, I think it also can be confusing. On the other hand, most people, it depends on our level of work, that most people, if we're lucky and sell $1,000, piece of a print or something, whatever, that's good. I like that. But I like having something in an affordable. So here's my strategy. I go mostly with a print piece, like Carol's done calendars of books, not calendars, books these ways, and the rest of it. And I get less scared that somebody's going to want to spend 45 rather than 345. If they do, okay, what I mean, and I could be wrong. People have told me I'm wrong. They certainly tell me I'm wrong to make greeting cards, because I think the greeting cards are not about margins as much as they are about promotions. So I do about marketing. So I have a $5 set of cards at places, not in Body of Work, but over at Sheffield, we had them that sold a lot. And maybe that's a bad thing, to have greeting cards that sell rather than somebody buying something else. But I think I go with 3 price points. I guess that's where I go with something. And Body of Work would include maybe 2, matted or calendars or books like Carol's and matted or whatever you want to put in.
Yeah, so what were your price points, Howard, for the bin work versus the pieces that were on the wall?
Goodness, that's the one thing I didn't research and remember and do it. I might have to just quickly Google search. If you give me 30 seconds, because I'd rather be accurate than to throw them out.
Sure.
And let Carol and Mary Beth respond. Let me see if I can find my inventory right away.
Yeah, no problem. The other thing that, while you're looking that up, I wanted to chat about is the presentation. So, we've talked a lot about, these kind of supplementary things like the book or the bin work, but also, how did you decide on a framer, or did you frame it yourself? Did printing on aluminum is a nice option because it's very professional and then it's easy to hang. And Mary Beth, you had an assortment of pieces. Some were framed, some were not, but all of the sides of your canvases were very finished and complete. So can you guys talk about that process at all?
Well, I print and mat and frame all of my own stuff. And I've kind of, if you were to look over the ages, my stuff, I've used the same frame for years. I've matted with very similar material at the same time. Image sizes the 1620 frame with an 11 by 14 print is pretty consistent for me. I kind of went into digital kicking and screaming, so I still my stuff still kind of holds the same. I kind of keep it at the same quality that I kept my analog prints. And I'm kind of the opinion simple is best. I just use a simple black metal frame. One, because I think it doesn't take away from the image, and I see a lot of frames in the gallery that it's a lovely frame, but people spend more time looking at the frame than they do what it's framing. And I also think that if somebody does buy one of my images, they may want to frame it in something else. So I don't really get too wound up about a fancy frame.
Yeah.
To me, it's like, keep it simple.
Well, for me, I know when I first got accepted into the NHAA last fall, the one complaint I had across the board is they didn't like the frames I used because I guess my work is more primitive or whatever, which I totally took to heart. So I bought some more rustic wood frames, and but just for a few paintings that I use, like on canvases or on just flat boards. And but what I found a couple of years ago was this, let me see if I have one here somewhere. Are these medium textured gesso boards, and they're in cradled wood. So what I would do is just paint and then stain the wood sides, and then I could just put the hooks and the wire across the back, and it's so much easier and less expensive than having to frame. So these were a find for me, because I mean, they still look very very nice and neat, and without having to spend however much money on a frame. So that was a real find for me.
And I piggyback on Carol's advice, photography and keeping things simple. And obviously, if you go in with prints and the rest of it, I've moved away from doing as much prints and mattes, etc. But if I would, I'm with her. Simple matte, stay with what you do in a pretty simple frame. Most people, or a lot of people, if they were going to buy them, are going to flip out, change it maybe and whatever. One of the things that photographers do is make framers money. Good photographer will make a framer a lot of money, because people want to reframe it. So they either like it the way it is or not. These days, to use Carol's strategy of keeping it simple, I go with metal and canvas, because not only do I not have to then put the frame together, figure out whether there's a piece of dust that I missed a million times under that glass, whatever. And so I send out and do canvas and aluminum, which in some ways is very simple. In other ways, it's of course different and modern, and I miss some of the traditional print work, because I also, have used cameras when there was film. Carol, think about 20,000 images I shot in Africa, and whether we would have shot film, how much we would have got through that.
Oh.
But you got the idea. So,
Yep.
so I go simple. I did find the pricing as well. Yeah. So somebody had asked in the audience to share where we get things. So I listed the places where I don't do my own work these days. I used to print my own prints, but I send out for all of my things right now until I fully retire from education as we go. So those are in the chat room right now. And then I got my prices. My big centerpiece was $475 in that way. And then I did have standard prices for the metals that were on the wall. I kept everything to aluminum and metal as a way to keep the theme. I did not mix canvas with aluminum with prints. I think we talked about that before, and keeping it clean. And then the 16 by 24 metals were 3 1/4. The 12 by 18s were 2 1/4. And my matted prints were 45, and I think it was 95. And I did that because the wall was a 20% commission, not a whatever else, 30%, 40, whatever the 40 is. So some people say in pricing that it's smart to keep your prices exactly the same and either eat the difference on those commissions or price them in so that even if you get less commission, you're making more money. I find I pass it to the consumer. I'm a little too empathetic. So I lessen my prices in these matted than I did over at Sheffield, where I charged a little more because I was taking a bigger hit with commissions, if that makes sense to people.
It does make sense, but I also just want to reiterate with the NHAA, because we're selling online, if you have another exhibition up, or if you have a personal website where you are listing your prices, it's very important that your pricing is consistent, because we do have some customers that will go onto your website because they love your work and they're interested. And in your exhibitor agreement with the NHAA, we do talk about pricing and about commissions. So it's important that you have those prices to be consistent. And I always, of course you need to be able to make your money out of the piece. So just, I would add the commission on top of what you want to get out of it, for sure, but do that consistently, whether you're selling it on your own website or through the NHAA or another gallery. It's not a good look to go from one show to the next and have totally crazy prices. You don't want to be selling work at the NHAA for $1,000 and then, oh, it's at George Marshall's store, so now it's going to be $1,500, and oh, now it's at 3S and it's 2,000. It should be, you should decide on what it's going to be, and it should be consistent. And that's not just for the NHAA, but for your own personal brand as an artist. You don't want someone to think, where should I buy this? Or, wow, that's weird, their prices went up so drastically. So it's definitely something that a savvy art collector is going to look at, and you want to have a good answer for it if you ever are confronted with that.
Good points.
Also, for some of you might know this, but I spent 8 years as a framer, and I'm actually one of the youngest master certified picture framers in the world. There's only about 80 of us now. So if you do have framing questions, I'm happy to answer them. And I do agree with the simplicity. In the framing world, we have a couple standby, tried and true rules that we like to apply to make things a little simpler. And one thing that I'm also a printmaker, and so a lot of times my paper is an important part of the work. So I actually like to do like a very slightly off white, like a gray or maybe a buff colored matte sometimes, because I'm going to show my entire deckled edge of my papers. And so there's a couple little tricks that I have, but I always like to make sure that the art is what you're focusing on and that the frame just blends into the background. And of course, framing can also be very expensive, which is why, ordering metal frames and doing it yourself is a really great way to do it. And you don't always have to go with black. There's also like a German silver and some other really neutral tones that can just become background. And it just is a clean, professional way to show your work. I do have a couple samples of things if people are excited, maybe when we get into end sort of the panel discussion and get into the prospectus chat and ask any questions, I can bring some of those out if people are interested.
Absolutely.
All right, so I think that pretty much ends the panel discussion for now. It's a little after 2 o'clock. And if anyone wants to ask questions, you can unmute, and now is your time to ask questions. There also are several questions in the chat that we can go over. Let's see. Lenny, you have a lot of questions. Why don't you ask your most pressing one?
Okay. To summarize, I tuned in a few minutes late, so forgive me if you already said this and I'm making you repeat it for others. But the concept of writing a proposal, can you, in a nutshell, summarize how is that different, or is it different from just a theme, like
Sure.
a
Yeah.
subject,
So
there's a subject matter, that's the idea of a theme. To me, a proposal would indicate to me that I'm actually researching something from my body of work, like it's a more theoretical research project. But maybe I'm overthinking it.
Well, I mean, it really depends on your work. We have several artists that are more conceptual artists, and talking about the thought process and, where your work stands in the canon of art history is a big part of who you are as an artist. Other artists are motivated by their materials, or, knowing a bit about you. Plein air is very important to you, and that's a big theme in your work. So what we're looking for in the proposal is for you to be able to communicate focus, and what we want is for all of our artists who participate in our body of work and our exhibition proposal series to get the most out of it as possible, and to have it be the most successful show that it can possibly be. And for that, we want to see focus. So you can write us a proposal that is all about your subject matter, your theme, your materials, your connection to your medium. All of those are completely valid. One isn't stronger or better than the other, but we want to see consistency, focus, and a clear vision. So as best you can communicate your clear vision to us, the better. What we don't want to see is, I don't know, but I want to make some work and I want to do it in October. We don't want any I don't knows, and we don't want I'm going to figure it out later. Like, for it to be a big opportunity for you and to have you be able to grow and get as much out of it as possible, we want to see, a focus. That's really the best way I think I can say it.
So if I may, very quickly, how long is a proposal supposed to be? Like a page, a paragraph? A page.
One page. So you might have a couple sentences about your work, meaning like the theme of your work or the style of your work or some of your inspiration. You might have a couple sentences about the sizes of your canvas. We want to know, is the work already created, or is it going to be a new project that you're starting on? And the most basic proposal, if I were to break it down, would be like, if I'm talking about myself, right? Amanda Kidshaw wants to have, I want to have a show in the East Gallery. It's going to have a collection of wall sculptures. On the main wall, I will be able to fit, 4 sculptures that are about, women in the environment. On the other side, I'm going to have, blah, blah, blah. So we want to see like a vision. We want you to share your vision with us. So that, does that answer your question? So I might, a couple sentences about the theme, a couple sentences about your timeline, a couple sentences about your medium and your presentation, if they're going to be framed, unframed, if, for you within the size of your work.
I beg your pardon. Do you want people to explain their process or?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's an opportunity for you to share, like, to share about your work, and you want it to be for different, everyone has a different approach to art making. So I don't expect them to all look the same. But if you want to talk about how you create the work, if, your process is important to you, then absolutely share that.
Okay.
What story are you trying to tell?
Mm-hmm. I know in the past we've come up with a title or a theme, and that just doesn't feel to me the same as a proposal. I think a proposal sounds much more like, much more in depth, explaining, well, Amanda, you said like references to, like, to me, the Renaissance period, to the French Impressionist period, to the building to the plein air period, building to doing a series of studies that all culminate in perhaps a studio piece. Like, that's all part of the process. Like, I don't know how in depth or how long the proposal is supposed to be versus the title of a show.
Absolutely. And this was a shift that I chose to make because I think it's important for at this stage in the process for you to be thoughtful and intentional and to use this as an opportunity to grow as an artist. Sometimes these when you're writing your proposal or you're writing your artist statement, it's a great exercise to get you deeper into your practice, to really get you thinking about what this body of work or this exhibition is really all about. And that can even give you some clarity in creating new work and how you focus. If you have, say, half of your work finished and you still are, have a couple more pieces that you want to include in the exhibition, having that clear focus, that clear vision of what you want it to be, can really influence the rest of the work that you make. And I don't want proposal. It sounds very formal, but my other hope is that as an NHAA member, I can coach you through it. You can ask me questions. You can show me a draft. The timeline is coming up, so we don't have too much time to work on it. But I'm looking for one page, simply lay out what your ideas are and what you want to do. And this is great practice for when you want to get into that Boston gallery, or when you want to, approach a small museum with your work. So I hope part of it is to create a rigorous program to help our artists go, if it's good enough for us and I can help you hone it down and make it even better next time, then, it'll take you further into your art practice and give you more opportunities down the line.
Thank you.
Any other questions? We have about 15 minutes left.
I have a question concerning preparing your piece for the lighting in the gallery. I'm in the middle of reviewing some samples for a 15-piece body of work that I'm going to be doing in January and February in in a museum. And I just got the proofs back, and I'm in the kitchen and they look horrible and I'm in tears, and I go in the sunlight today and it looks great. How do we know, in photography, lighting is really important. So what kind of lighting does the gallery have? Is that consistent with other galleries and museums?
Ooh, that's a good question. Carol, I would like you to weigh in on this one too.
Ours are, it's LED lighting. So, and it's fairly cool. I don't know if that helps or not. I mean,
come in.
Are all galleries?
Bring a small sample, bring it in.
Yeah, bring a piece in and see.
I have the proofs right now. I will. Because
I mean, lighting is something that we've been talking about. We've been talking about some gallery renovations, and lighting is kind of as important. We need more lighting. And so that's something that definitely needs to be taken into consideration.
Is that consistent, your lighting, with other galleries and museums, what they're using for the type of light itself? How different it can be.
I can't say that it is. I really don't know. I don't know if there's a standard.
Yeah.
And the other questions I had is, do you see a popularity trend towards the medium that a piece is, whether is canvas bygone, is the move towards, framed metals or prints, or, what is?
Not at all. Not at all. We have such a diverse group of artists at the NHAA who use lots of different mediums, and we have traditional, contemporary, prints on metal, canvas, you name it. And it's just about finding the right buyer. There's not one that's more popular than another. And even, and same thing with price points. I would say everyone really likes that under $500 price point, but that does not mean that we don't sell expensive pieces. Last week, I sold a painting for $4,600, and it was a more it was a very specific painting that you wouldn't necessarily think has a
Yeah.
super broad appeal. So
Good for you.
it's really, I would say don't let that influence you.
And the last question I had was, I love the vinyl ads, and I'm not quite sure I understand what it is material wise, and like, where's a resource for me if I wanted to do a similar thing, because those look
Well,
great.
it basically, I mean, you know what contact paper is like? It's just a vinyl with a sticky back. That's exactly what this is. And as I say, some of them are perforated, like the window ones I used in the window were perforated. That's what people, you go by a bus that's got vinyl all on the sides and the windows. That's so you can see out, but they can't see in. So there are lots of places. I don't know where where are you located?
I'm in New Hampshire, but you know, where did you find a successful resource that you use?
Well, I've worked in the business, so I've used my own personal contacts out of Massachusetts, but there's lots of people. I mean, we use
Is that a company? I mean, we don't have to have a.
No, I
personal-
mean, I'm
is it-
happy to give you those.
Yeah.
I mean, some people have bought their vinyl online.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't want to invest in something online if somebody has a good resource and they know it
Right.
works. Then
I
it's
can,
quality.
we can
Yeah.
talk about, when
Thank
you're
you.
ready, we can talk about that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Amanda, can somebody speak to, were their openings well attended, and were most of the sales a result of the opening, or did they consistently sell throughout the month?
That's a great question. I would say that when openings can be a chaotic time in the gallery, and there's always a lot of excitement around them. And our last opening, we had 265 people there. What's a little bit more typical is right around like the 175 to 200 in terms of opening numbers, but it's not always the best time to be able to get a great view of the work because it can be so crowded. So I find that when the shows open, sometimes collectors will come in, and I have made several sales right before the opening. And then throughout, but it really kind of depends on the buyer and the artist. Mary Beth sold at least 2-3 pieces during your opening.
Yep.
And then, she consistently sold throughout the month. The expensive piece that I sold last week, the buyer had come in 3-4 times just to look at it before pulling the trigger on it. So I would say that if you sell a piece or two during an opening, that's a great sign. And, it doesn't always happen. But if you don't sell anything during your opening, do not be discouraged, because it doesn't mean that you're not going to sell. And often people will come back after coming to the opening to make their purchase.
Thank you.
Any last questions before we head out? And also, I just want to say, like, if you have a question after this presentation, please feel free to send me an email. I think most of you have my email address already, but I can write it down here in the comments if you want. It's nhaa.gallerymanager@gmail.com. You can also always call me in the gallery. I love talking to members and hearing from everyone. The gallery phone number is listed on the website. It doesn't make sense for me to list it for you here now.
One final question, if I may. What is the date that is the date for proposals for galleries the same as the date for proposals for body of works? And if so, when is the date?
Yes, they are the same. And actually, I'm going to do another screen share here so I can share that information with everyone. Sorry, let me get out of this PowerPoint. So I'm just going to go to the NHAA website here, and can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
So here we have the website, and I'm just scrolling down to the bottom where we have our listing of calls for art. And right here down at the bottom, we have the Let It Snow. The deadline is approaching. So the deadline for that one is going to be Wednesday. And then the body of work and the exhibition proposal series. So I'm going to click on the body of work. This is going to take you to the basic information here, one wall. And then you can click this link here, and this is going to pop up to our full prospectus. So make sure you you read through this and make sure that all of the deadlines and everything work for you. But we only offer these opportunities once a year, and they're really great opportunity for our members to be able to have a solo show. And, it's one of the most rigorous and exciting things that I think we do. Not to knock against our member shows or our open juried shows, but sometimes as an artist, you're just ready for a little bit more. And I really love that we can offer this. So please take a look at all of this. And then under here, how to apply, submit your online exhibition proposal by close of business, December 12th. And just to show you, we can click this link here. And this is going to take me to our online form. So you're going to fill out your email, your first name, your last name. Are you current on your dues? Hopefully everyone will be a yes. And then right here, submit one-page proposal that includes the following: title and theme of your exhibition, size and number of pieces included, techniques and mediums, and project timeline. And I'm looking for a PDF, a docs file, something very simple like that. 2 sample images. So these do not have to be images that you include in the show, especially if you want some time to really flesh out your idea. You're not going to be on the hook for any of this, but this is a really great practice to show you what we're going to be looking for our PR. And again, just to focus you into what we're looking for. So add 2 files. It's not like Art Call. You can just add the files very simply, and there's not as many restrictions in terms of the size of the image. I just want to see 2 images that you can be like, this painting is really, this is my best painting that I've done so far. I want to focus it around this. Here's another one that I'm working on. I'll even take a work in progress. I just want I want you to practice submitting your images online, and I want you to show me just some visual cues as to what you're thinking about. We have our wall layout, and this is also important. I want to know where you want your show to be and what dates. Now, the dates are a little bit confusing, and I've gotten some feedback from people about the dates on the prospectus are different from the application. I will try to work on that. But the reason why it is a little confusing is because we want to give as many of our artists this opportunity. And based on how many people apply, we're hoping, to have the gallery full of body of work or full rental, the exhibition proposal series. But if we get a lot more interest in body of work than in exhibition proposal series, we'll pivot to having more body of works. If we have, very few body of works and we have a lot of interest in the exhibition proposal series, then we'll be able to provide that. So it's really based on, on you, what you submit to us and what our members want. And just because there is a proposal, it might sound like scary because it's different from the lottery system and you're going to be up, competing with other artists. At the NHAA, we have so much wall space and we have plenty of time for everyone to be able to show their work. So is it competitive? Is it an amazing opportunity? Absolutely, but there's no reason to be intimidated by it. This is only for our members, and it's just a really special thing that we can offer.
Amanda,
Yes.
may I ask you a question because it's pertinent to what you just said? You said it's different than the lottery. So in the past, they did a lottery, but like if you had just shown the year before, then you were kind of moved to the end of the line. Like they tried to give people who hadn't shown in, say, the last 2 years, a chance to be chosen by the lottery. And then, of course, it was your first choice month, your second choice month, et cetera. Is that all eliminated?
No, we want, and it says in the prospectus as well, like we are looking we want to give everyone an opportunity. So if you had a body of work or a rental last year, you're going to be, you're not, you know, we're going to try to give the opportunities first to the people who haven't had the opportunity to show yet. And
Okay,
it's in
thank
that same 2-year window.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any last question before we head out? And again, you'll always have the opportunity to email me.
Thank you for putting this
Okay.
together.
Well, thank you all for attending, and you know, to be continued. It sounds like maybe we'll end up doing a framing workshop next time.
Sounds great.
That sounds great. Thank you, Amanda.
All right, bye
Thank you.
everyone.
All right.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody.
Thank you.
everybody. Thank you very much, everyone.
Happy Saturday.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
bye. Kevin, did you have a question?
Just first of all, brilliant. And secondly, can you give me a call?
Yes,
In a few
in
minutes? Okay.
a little bit.
Okay, terrific. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.